evening. Good evening. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining Respus Live. If you would please share the video and have a watch party. If you would please share and let's have a watch party on this evening. Again, thank you so much for joining Respus Live. We're so glad to have you to be a part of our show on tonight. I'm extremely excited about our guest on tonight. And we're going to start off by the subject, of course, and it's entitled, The Impossible is Possible. The impossible is possible. So whatever anyone has told you that is impossible, we're going to discredit it right now before we even get started and move forward, because I am possible is what impossible stands for. That means that you have what is in you to make it possible. Your dreams, your visions, your aspirations, whatever your desires are possible. Now, I have to admit that my dreams and desires are possible with God, because he says with him, all things are possible. And when he said all things with an S, that excited me, because there's no one particular thing. There is nothing specific. He says all. That includes my dreams, my visions, my aspirations, my desires. All that I think of is possible through him. And so Nelson Mandela has a quote that I love, and it says, "It only seems impossible until it's done." It only seems impossible until it's done. So I want you to understand tonight that whatever you think is impossible is possible. I want you to walk it out. I want you to be able to move into your destiny, into your dreams and your visions, realizing that it is possible. I don't care if no one's done it before. It's possible for you. I don't care if someone else has already done it. They're not you. So make sure you walk in your giftedness and you move forward in everything that you desire to do. I don't care if it's small or if it's huge. Again, I say the sky is not the limit. There are no limits for us. This right here that's going on, this movement that you have to see it before you see it, there's nothing impossible. If you can see it in your spiritual eye, and you can walk in it and you can believe it, then you can achieve it. Because again, there's nothing impossible. You have to see it before you see it. So I want to challenge you on tonight to go ahead and jot down those things that you think are impossible, because we're going to discredit every one of them tonight. Before we end this broadcast, before we end this live, you're going to understand why I say the impossible is possible. And remember, there's nothing too hard for God. All things are possible. We want to welcome our guest on tonight. I'm super, super excited to have him here with us tonight. Mr. Chaz Beasley is in the house, and we're so glad to have him with us. He is now on his second term as a member of the North Carolina House of Representatives, serving the people in District 92. So we're giving a shout out to the people in District 92, and we're so glad to have Mr. Beasley in the house on tonight. So thank you, sir, for joining Respus Live on tonight. I just want to thank you for being a part of this broadcast, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to let the people on the East Coast understand that there's nothing impossible. So please introduce yourself to the viewers and let them know who you are and what you do and what you stand for, and share with us your story about how most people would say it's impossible.
Yeah, so first off, I want to say thank you for having me.
Yes.
Like I told you when we first met, you don't have to beg a millennial to come on a podcast. Like, that's the easiest ask you can make of somebody. You want to do a podcast? Absolutely. So again, my name is Chaz Beasley. I was born and raised in Western North Carolina. My mom raised me on her own. Single mom is a pretty common story for a lot of kids that grew up the way I grew up. The uncommon part of my story is that I was able to go from my little public school to Harvard and then to Georgetown for law school, and something that a lot of people said was impossible. I have a lot of stories, a lot of motivational stories about people who try to discourage me from actually making those things happen. And what I found was that sometimes people saying something is impossible is the best motivation that you can get.
That's good.
And so I ran for the House a few years ago in 2016, ran in a seat that we flipped from red to blue. It was a competitive seat. A lot of people didn't give me a shot to win that race, and we got it done. And so what I find is that in the General Assembly, we have a real responsibility to figure out how to get to yes rather than to get to no. And I find that people, to your point earlier, who believe in impossibility are oftentimes trying to figure out a way to say no. And one of the best pieces of advice that I received was that if someone tells themselves that they can't do something, they'll always be right. And so I find that oftentimes it's better to actually go out there and take risks. And that's really been the story of my life. And that's the reason why, I'm running for lieutenant governor, because I think this is a very important time to do some very important things for the people in North Carolina. They're counting on us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's start with you being raised in North Carolina. That's the best part of the world, of course. Nothing can be finer than to be in Carolina in the morning.
And in the afternoon and in the evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love North Carolina, and the state is so beautiful. So you grew up in North Carolina in a low-income, single-parent home. With that being said, and then you stated that you went to Harvard and Georgetown. To so many, that would have been impossible. But you're sitting here tonight as an example of how we have to dispel when people tell us what's possible and what's not, and what they think is possible. Statistically, they look at low income families in houses and single parents, and that's how they build prisons, and that's how their school systems realize or say if they're going to be successful. So you had like a couple of strikes based upon society, from low income and then a single parent. So tonight, I want to encourage every single parent that is listening, including myself, that we can do it on our own with the help of God. So low income, single parent home, and you end up in Harvard. Despite the challenges of poverty, you had support from your family, your church family, and your friends, and they invested in you. Tell me how a young African-American male in a low-income housing development with just your mom there, what made you different? What made you not fall into the statistics?
Well, I think one of the things that we always have to remember is that all of us are a bad day away from a really tough life. So I don't ever want to start to think of myself as being somehow more special or more capable or more talented than a lot of people out there. I mean, my grandmother, for example, who helped raise me, she was born in 1910. She was a sharecropper in Western North Carolina when she was a kid. And she had an elementary school education. But I'm so grateful that there is a big difference between intelligence and education.
Wow.
I have been able to get a really strong education, but that doesn't make me any more intelligent than any other person. It also doesn't mean that I can't learn from other people. And I think that's a big part of what we have to remember when it comes to actually making our stories, the best stories they can be, is that we have a responsibility to listen to others, to learn from others, and use that education to then better ourselves. So I'm very grateful that I was surrounded by a lot of people who saw things in me when I didn't see them in myself.
That's good.
And I also think it's very important that we remember that we leave a legacy. We either leave a positive one or a neutral one or a negative.
That is very good. That is very good. That is very good. So you had that support from your family.
I did.
And my grandmother raised me, so I know how special they are and how they pour into us and how they see things in us that we didn't see in ourselves. And it is so important to surround ourselves with people that see things in us and pull it out of us so that we can be our best selves. So you had the support of your family, your church, and your teachers that invested in you. So how did your teachers invest in you?
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate is that my guidance counselor from middle school has been a consistent part of my life for almost 20 years.
Wow.
In fact, more than 20 years. She gave me some of the best advice that I've ever received in my life. And what she said was, when I was deciding on whether to apply to Harvard or not, she said, well, you might as well apply. The worst thing they can say is no. And I think that so many of us live our lives afraid of someone telling us no when we actually know what we've been called to do and walk in. And that you have to be really willing to step out on faith and be willing to step out with the possibility that someone's going to tell you no, but understanding that sometimes no is the worst outcome, and just hearing that is the worst outcome, but that the greater reward can be when you hear yes, and that you can't actually get someone to say yes if you don't ask the question. The Bible talks about you have not because you ask not.
That's good.
And so sometimes you have to be willing to ask. And so my guidance counselor, Miss Bach, was tremendously impactful in my life, and has been a person who has been a figure who has continually pushed me for decades now.
That is awesome.
And so that's the kind of thing that I really appreciate about a lot of the teachers here in North Carolina. They definitely don't do it for the money because we don't pay them enough.
That's so true.
And they definitely don't do it for the shine because they don't get shine for a lot of the
Yes.
things that they do. But they see something in these kids and they take
Yes.
ownership over their success, and they end up pushing them and making them better. And so we owe them.
Yes.
We owe them to make sure that we can make their lives as easy as possible,
Yes.
because oftentimes they are the ones that have the next generation in their hands.
That
And
is
so we
so
owe it to
true.
our teachers to do better by them than we're doing by them right now.
One of the most influential people in my life is my 10th grade teacher, Mrs. Hester McFadden, whom I call Mom, and I've been calling her that since the 10th grade. And I've been out of school for a while. Actually, we celebrated our 30th high school in 2018. That tells you how old I am.
I still ain't guessing. I'm not taking debate. I'm not taking debate. I'm not doing it.
She propelled me. She saw something in me and she called it out. And today she still encourages me. And so I am forever grateful for the teachers that pour into the students. And I told her, I said, God sent you to Pender High School for me because I needed her. She filled a void in my life that was missing. And she has been instrumental from that day to this. And I still call her Mom from the 10th grade to now. So I understand how your teachers invested in you because I had one, more than one. I can think of my 7th grade teacher, Miss Reba Marshall, Reba Jordan. She invested in me. So I can look back over my life and see how the teachers didn't do it, as you stated, for the money. But it was ministry back then.
Absolutely.
It was ministry. So I am
Absolutely.
actually grateful for my teachers that poured into me, and Cheryl Beatty. I could name so many that just took me under their wings and allowed me to see something in myself that I didn't even see. So again, I'm excited about your story and how you didn't allow your environment to dictate or determine where you were going. What was it inside of you that let you know you was different? Not better, but different.
Well, I think a couple of things are very important to remember. Number one, you can be different, but still very much have a lot of the things that other people have within them as well. And also that we are all different in some way. I firmly believe that every single one of us has something that we excel at. And oftentimes the reason that people are not able to live up to their fullest potential is because the thing that they excel at has not been fostered or they have not been exposed to it. And I see that a lot, particularly in people that grow up the way that I grew up. Like I said, I was definitely not the person that had the most capability when I was growing up. But I think that a lot of people saw things in me and fostered those talents and allowed me to become who I ultimately became and who I'm still becoming.
Yes,
because
actually.
we're all growing, every
Evolving.
single one of us. But I also think it's very important to remember that our kids are very, very much looking to us, and that oftentimes who we say they are is who they start to believe they are.
Oh, that's good.
And so that's why it's so important that you have those teachers that say to you, you can do more,
Yes.
you can be more.
Yes.
And that we create environments where people understand that, yes, there are multiple paths to success. There's not just one way to be successful. Success does not just look like one thing. And that we expose our kids to a variety of things so that they can learn what things they excel at and are good at, and can be great at. So much of what we do in this state and in this country depends on the environments that we build.
True.
And we have built environments for a lot of these kids where all they see are people who are working and not getting ahead. And so they start to believe that there's no connection between how hard you work and success, oftentimes because that connection is actually not as strong as it should be, in particular in a place like North Carolina. So we owe it to those kids to show them, yeah, if you work hard enough, but if you're also in an environment where you are fostered, because we have a responsibility to our kids to make sure that they have that kind of environment, that you can be your best self, that you can live up to your potential, that you can be a part of what's being built, and that you don't have to feel like you're on the outside looking in.
That is so true. I have a 16-year-old daughter, Christina Brianna, and I speak into her all the time, let her know that whatever she desires to be, she can become whatever she desired to be. And so many times our kids don't hear that. And so it's imperative that we speak into them, and definitely with church, family, and teachers. Actually, they were speaking into you all your life. Absolutely. Based upon your story. And I am excited because you use the public school education to push you and prepare you for Harvard with honors. That is amazing to me. So tell me about that. How did the public school education help you reach your potential?
Well, I think that a couple things are very important to remember. Number one, when I got to school, I felt ready. And I think that a lot of people look at schools as though they are places to get in and that's the end of the story. You want to be ready once you're there. And I felt as though I was able to get that opportunity because I had so many teachers that did pour into me. I also think that it's important to remember that when you go to any major university or any major college, or you do anything in life, that preparedness is an ongoing journey. It's not just a destination that you reach. And what I found was that I found a really good group of folks in undergrad that helped push me too. And that I still had connections back home that helped me, get used to the fact that, you couldn't drink the tea up in Massachusetts. It wasn't like the tea down here. I got burned a couple times in the dining hall with that. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But you need those connections because we're not machines. We are human beings, and we want to have that connection where we feel like we're still connected with our family, connected with our folks, and so it was a lot of hard work. But I definitely felt like once I got there, the folks back home had readied me for where I was walking into. And I think that should be our goal. Absolutely. When it comes to our education system in North Carolina.
Absolutely. That is amazing that the school system prepared you for that. And that's a story that we don't hear often. So I'm so glad that you're here to share that with our viewers, that the school system can prepare you to go to Harvard with honors. Right. And so, again, we are here to dispel that the impossible is not possible. Right. We're here to let people know that the impossible is possible. And we look at you and we see how so many things were actually placed in your life that could have easily been a stumbling block or could have easily discouraged you from reaching your fullest potential. But because of your system, your family, your church, your teachers, and everyone that invested in you, you knew that there was something that you had to do and to make a difference. So what was it, or when was it that you knew that your life, you were here to make a difference in the lives of others, because that's what you're doing?
That's a very good question. I don't know if there was really a particular moment in time where I felt that way. I think that sometimes, I am a person of faith. My faith is tremendously important to me. And I firmly believe that our purpose in this life is constantly revealed. It's not just revealed at one time.
Absolutely.
And so that's the reason why you have to kind of keep talking and listening to God and make sure that you're staying connected with the Spirit, and that you're not just looking at it as, okay, now I know what I'm going to do and I'm going to go do my own thing. You have it's a constant conversation. And I think that there have been times in my life where things have been made manifest and revealed to me throughout stages.
I understand what you're saying.
Right. And so oftentimes what I find is that it's not even just like one moment where you wake up and you say, okay, I know exactly what I'm gonna do in my life. Right. It's very much like something will happen. You'll say, I think I'm being led in this direction. And that's not to say that somehow everything that I do is foreordained. I don't believe that. But I do believe that we are given the opportunity to figure out what path we're going to take, and that we have to take the path that he has for us.
That is good.
And not necessarily the path that we would take ourselves.
So where do your passion, where does it come from?
It's hard to say. I do know that I am one of those people who acts of service is like the book, The 5 Love Languages. That's like my love language, is acts of service. Good. So I feel like what I'm doing right now, being in public service, being in elected office, running for lieutenant governor, I think that is my way of showing that I care for the people that built me into who I am. And I know that Not everything is about politics, but I do think that everything is about service. When
Yes.
you are a family member and you take care of your cousins, or when you're a parent and you look out for your 16-year-old daughter,
Yes.
that's service.
Yes.
And that's really what we're put on earth to do. And if we don't, keep that focus, then sometimes what we'll think is that we're here for ourselves, when
Yeah.
oftentimes we're not. We're actually here for other people, to make other people better. And I think that's really been the story of my life. And
Yeah.
a lot of people that did a lot for no reward, because they saw something in me.
That is amazing. And your passion came from helping others. I always say that you can always tell where your passion is whenever you do it and you feel good.
Absolutely.
And you get
Absolutely.
that feeling inside that you've made a major accomplishment in someone's life. And that's the reason why I like Respus Live and like interviewing people as yourself. And because we can tell someone that's listening, or some little African-American young man that's in low income and he just has his mom in the house, and he may feel like, because unfortunately a lot of society doesn't show the success stories. And I call it success because when we make it out and we're able to help someone, I feel like that's success. I'm not saying
Absolutely.
that anything monetary makes us successful, but
Right.
to be able to help other people, that makes you successful in my eyes. So there's a little kid that's watching Chaz, and he's going to be excited to see you here and to know that it is possible, and that there's nothing that he can't obtain, because we get to look at you and as a witness to what God can do with a young man from North Carolina. And I'm elated by that.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm real proud of you. So speak to the little boy that may be watching, or someone that feels like they can't make it. Let them know, speak to that little boy and encourage him. And, the single parent that's listening, like myself, because to be honest, sometimes it's hard doing it yourself. And then you wonder if you're doing it right. And is she going to be productive and effective in society when she becomes older? So speak to the little boy and then to the single parent.
Yeah, well, I'll borrow from what the old saints used to say. There's no testimony without a test.
Oh, that's good.
I think that's very true.
That is so true.
And oftentimes what I find are the best stories are oftentimes the stories that aren't necessarily the most fun at the time.
Absolutely.
I think we've all got stories about crazy stuff that's happened at the time that we were like, I don't know how this is going to work out. But
Yes.
once we look back on it, then we're laughing about it. We're talking to other people about it. That really is how life is. And so what I would say to, any kids that are growing up the way that I'm growing up, that I grew up, I would say to them, keep in mind, there is a place for you here too.
That is
Now,
so good.
whether or not we as a state, and I'm speaking mostly to us as elected officials, whether or not we actually embrace, empower, and encourage everyone to be a part of what we're building and make sure everyone is included, not just for the sake of inclusion, but because it actually makes us all better for everyone to be included. That's our responsibility as elected officials. That's our responsibility as leaders. And I'll say to that single mom, or to that single father or that grandmother that like you were talking about, that grandfather, what you are pouring into those kids matters.
That's good.
What you are doing is so very important. And oftentimes what I find is the stories of struggle are the stories that can be the best stories when you come out on the other side, if you continue to fight and push. And so I find it to be my responsibility as an elected official, as someone who wants to run for the second highest office in this state, to make sure that every single person knows they have a part of what we are doing. And whether or not if you're doing what you need to do, and you're playing by the rules and you're working hard, that we should encourage and embrace you and make sure that single mom, single dad, single parent, single grandparent, that you are a part of what we're building, and we appreciate you, because a lot of these people they're raising the next generation of people that are going to actually run this state. And if we do wrong by this generation, we will do wrong by future generations.
That is so true. You've said a mouthful that time, because really we have to pour into our children and to others, because they may not get it at home.
Right.
So every opportunity that I get to share with a young person, I try my best to do that. There have been so many movements that that we won't call out by name, but it says to help someone. But I am inclined to believe that for every kid we come in contact with, we should make an impact.
Absolutely.
And it is my desire after every encounter, especially with the youth, is that they leave feeling better than they did when they first embraced me or when they first came. And so it just takes a few moments. So I make it a point to learn their names and things about them, so that I can speak to them by name and let them know that they're important. And so it's essential, because again, they're our future.
Yeah. And, we were talking about schools earlier.
Yes.
I mean, let's put this in perspective, right? If you are like me and you go to public school, K through 12, that is 13 years of your life that we as a state have a responsibility for your development. 13 years. That means that even if you live to be 130, that 10% of your life is spent somehow being influenced and impacted by what we do. So when we send kids to schools and the schools are crumbling, or they don't have the resources that they need, or their teachers are stressed out because they're going from, grading papers to going to their second job, if all those things are happening, then that's going to show up somewhere.
That's true.
I firmly believe that in this life, we're much more like balloons that are being squeezed. And what I mean by that is that the air goes somewhere. So if you squeeze a person enough, that either that air is going to go somewhere or that balloon is going to pop. And so we can't keep squeezing our teachers, squeezing our kids, squeezing our families, and expecting that pressure to not show up somewhere else. I think we sometimes look at our kids not as though they're individuals that should be fostered individually, but as though they are numbers on a page, and that's unacceptable. We have to do better. That's one of the reasons why I'm running for this office, because I know we can.
Yes.
I've seen the transformative power of education in my own life.
Absolutely.
But we've got to step it up. We've got to do a better job, and we've got to start thinking long term about something that's going to affect 13 years of these people's lives.
And when you were speaking, I never thought about it that way. I was like, "Ooh, that is a lot. 13 years."
13 years. I mean, if you get to be, even in your older age,
50?
I mean, you're spending a lot of those years of your life in the care of the schools.
That is so true. I've never looked at it until you just broke it down. So thank you so much. That lets us know the importance of education in the school system and having the right people in there, like the teachers that we had and the guidance counselors. I remember one person told me that they went to the guidance counselor and they said, well, you're not going to be able to do that, do something different. So it is good to know that, we're going to spend more time and effort in making sure we have the right people there, shaping and molding our children, because it was Mrs. McFadden and Reba Jordan and Cheryl Beatty that helped shape me into the woman that I am. And it is good to know that that's one thing that you're very concerned about,
right? And
take very serious. And I'm, again, just to think about a public school system preparing you for such a great university, and then you walk in with honors and just own the place. I love it. I love it. I love it.
I appreciate it.
So how do you help teachers regain that power and become creative in the classrooms?
Well, number one, I think as someone who was part of the most tested generation of North Carolinians, we gotta get away from the bubble sheets. Not everything can be done in, A, B, C, D, or E format. And I think that a lot of our teachers are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
They're talking about how they want more flexibility. Now, do we need to have a way of making sure that kids are actually learning the basic skills that they need to be successful? Oh, absolutely. But there are better ways than just doing a standardized test, because oftentimes what we found with some of the national standardized tests in particular, that all it does is actually test for whether or not you're poor or you're rich, whether you come from a affluent family or a family that's struggling financially. And so we don't want to have situations where we're not testing the right things. I'll give you a prime example of something that's going on right now in North Carolina. We've had a lot of debate in the General Assembly about how we grade our schools. And one of the things that we've found is that our grades oftentimes just tell how many impoverished kids that you have in their school. So I was a kid that was on free and reduced lunch, for example. I was one of those kids that we had a lot of financial struggles when I was a kid. But what I want is to make sure that when we are actually seeing whether our kids are getting a good education is not how they are necessarily showing up in school, but how they end up once school is over.
That is very good.
So we want to actually test, okay, are you taking a child that may have been struggling and moving them from, reading at a first grade level at second grade to reading at a third grade level at second grade? If so, we want to test that. We want to see if that's what's happening. And so a lot of the things that we do at a state level affect people in their everyday lives. And if we're not careful, what we will do is we'll actually reinforce a lot of the disadvantages that they already have because we have put them in a situation where they cannot, escape the problems that they're already facing. So there's a lot of things when it comes to education that we've got to do better. I'm on the education committee in the House, and that's one of the big reasons is because I know the transformative power of it. And I do know that we've got to make sure that we're doing right by these folks and building a system and building a situation where they can truly grow into their best selves.
That is awesome. I love the fact that you want to make sure they're prepared after school because life really kicks in after school.
Oh yeah.
That's when it gets real.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you graduate from high school, a lot of times you are asked to make decisions about whether or not you're going to take on 6 figures in debt if you go to college, or you're making decisions about whether or not to go to the military, which is literally a life or death decision for some people.
Right.
And hats off to everyone that does decide to go in the military because I think we need to make sure that everyone understands the tremendous sacrifice that both members of the armed services and their families make.
It's very important.
But that is a big decision that we should prepare our kids to have the most information about when they take that decision. And so all of these are big choices. So when someone graduates from high school, they should be ready to step into adulthood seamlessly. And if we have not prepared them, I think that is on us as a state and as a community and not necessarily on them, because we all recognize that kids in some way, shape or form, whether they are 18 days old or 17 years old, are in some way responsible. We're in some way responsible for their well-being, and that oftentimes where they go is where we have guided them to go or led them to go, and that people don't oftentimes, overcome, what's happening. So we have to be really responsible and really responsive to the needs of our kids.
That is great because one of my prayers is that I have ensured that Christina is prepared for life because not only education, but from a spiritual perspective and mental and emotional perspective. So how can we tie in the parent partnering with education to enrich the child's whole life?
Well, number one, I think it's important to remember that as we continue to have families that are having to spend more and more of their time away from their kids because they have to have enough money to survive, that does show up. It's like the example that I gave about squeezing the balloon.
Yes.
If we have parents that aren't able to spend sufficient time with their kids because they're so busy trying to just keep the lights on, that's a problem. I'll give you an example of something that happened in my life. I remember when I was in high school, my mom had 2 jobs and I had an after-school job. And even though my mom and I lived in the same home, there was a period where for 3 straight days we didn't see each other because my mom would wake up and go to work before I'd wake up and go to school. I'd go to school, go to track practice, shower, go to my job. And by the time I got home from my job, my mom was asleep. So we didn't see each other for 3 straight days. Now, that's not a knock on my mom at all. She did a phenomenal job.
That's amazing.
But that is saying that if that happens enough, and if we keep asking families to do more and more with less, then after a while, kids are not going to get what they need from their parents because their parents are going to be worried about the bills coming due. That is our responsibility in building an economy where people can work hard and then get paid for their hard work. I don't think anybody should go broke in North Carolina working 2 jobs. That's ridiculous. We need to build an economy where, especially since we're such a fast-growing state, we're now 9th in the country in terms of the size. We got to make sure that we're doing right by folks and that they know, you know what, if I put in a hard day's work, then I'm going to be able to take care of my family. I think that's a simple ask, and that's something that everybody wants. And there's a lot of dignity to people when they're able to provide for their families.
That is so true. And coming from a personal perspective, something that you had to do yourself and you watched your mom do, you don't want that cycle repeated for other people,
right?
Because shout out to her,
right,
for raising such an amazing young man, and now you're in the opportunity to help so many other parents that don't have to go through that. And so the level of respect that comes with that is amazing because it's easy for you to tell me if you hadn't lived in that circumstance or in my shoes. But by you having experienced that yourself, when you share that with someone else, like the people that are watching Respus Live now, they can say, you know what? He lived that. And
Right.
now he doesn't want that cycle repeated for someone else.
Right. Yeah. And I do think it's important that when we are deciding who is going to lead us, that we at least have folks at the table that have lived experiences that are reflective of the people that they're trying to put in, you know. And that's not to say that if you grew up well off, that, you know, you're going to somehow, you know, you somehow cannot learn how to understand how people are living their day-to-day lives. But it is to say that if everybody at the table has a very narrow set of perspectives, you're going to get a very narrow set of policies that reflect that narrow set of perspectives, and that you're swimming against a current.
Yes.
So I think we do have to do better and be more responsive and more reflective of what people are actually dealing with in their everyday lives.
That is so true. That is so true. And again, I just feel like even in ministry, whenever I walk up to help minister to someone, that if I can share my personal experiences, and again, it came from a very hard place, but because I experienced it, I can relate to you, and I can help you and encourage you to understand that the impossible is possible. So you can actually speak to a room full of single parents and low income families that lived in poverty, whose parents are working 2 jobs. You can go in there and speak from a very honest place and gain the respect of so many people because you've experienced it. Just like with ministry, whenever I can share with a young lady that I have been through divorce and it was one of the hardest things I ever done, then she says, okay, well, if you made it, then it's possible that I can make it. And so your story is amazing. Your life is amazing. And the things you've accomplished is a testament that the impossible is possible. I am possible.
Right.
So you are possible. So tell Respus Live viewers why they should vote for you in the upcoming election.
Well, I think that we have to build a state where everybody can live up to their fullest potential and participate in the state's success. And that's really the lived experience of my life. That's what I've had to deal with my entire life. I think that, you know, within the General Assembly, I've been able to make sure that we're getting a lot of things done for everyday people. We just passed a sexual assault modernization bill that would update our sexual assault laws. We passed that unanimously through the House. That's a prime example of something that is helping people in their everyday lives. And so I think we need to remember that in all of these leadership positions, who has the gavel matters, who is actually running the show matters. This lieutenant governor's office is going to have huge impact and could very well be the difference between us taking the state in a direction where everyone can be a part of what we're building and us going backwards. And I think we have to be very deliberate about that. And so that's the reason why I'm running for lieutenant governor. And that's the reason why I hope that everyone, all of your listeners, will tell all their friends to support us, because this is going to be a very, very important race, and it's going to have some very big ramifications for what the direction of our state takes.
That is very good. And I'm glad that you've taken the opportunity to share with the viewers, you know, some of the things that you're passionate about and things that are important to you, because in our general conversation, you allowed us to see your heart and your intent. And it is so important that we see the true essence of a person and what you stand for and what you believe in. And we're grateful to have this opportunity to share with you. So tell us about your social media contacts. How can we reach you? How can we follow you?
Oh, yeah.
Voting is in February, correct?
Yeah, early voting starts February 13th. The election day itself is March 3rd, but you'll have 17 days to vote in advance. Okay. My Twitter handle is Chaz Beasley. My IG is Chaz_Beasley. My email address is chaz@chazbeasley.com. Thank you, Mom, for giving me a unique name, because all of those URLs were easy to get. I got all my handles. Nobody wanted them. So hit me up anywhere. I'm always happy to chat with everyone. Always happy to answer any questions that people may have, because this is going to be a very important election.
And so we want to follow you during this race. So we want to make sure that we actually keep in contact with you through social media. And so before we go, I want you to share anything that you feel like our viewers need to know, not only just to vote for you, but how can we leave this broadcast allowing somebody that's watching to understand that the impossible is possible?
Right. Well, I would say that number one, you never know what your story and what your life is going to do for someone else and what impact it's going to have.
That is good.
And so I would say to everyone who's listening, we have an opportunity next year to make sure that everyday folks are represented in their government.
Yes.
And that, quite frankly, is who the government should actually represent.
That is good.
And so I'm going to continue to speak for people who are living the lives that I've lived, who are growing up the way that I grew up, that are working the way that my family worked, because we have a responsibility, not just to walk through an open door and let that door shut behind us. We have a responsibility to keep that door open for everyone.
Yeah, I was just saying earlier that it's important for us to make sure we bring someone with us.
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me that you want to bring so many people with you in this journey called life. And so I have a gift for you, a gift that I have for all of my interviewees, and this is a hashtag. You have to see it before you see it. Sort of like with you and what you're doing. When I met you in church, I introduced myself and I called you what you were running for, because I believe in seeing things before they happen. So I hope that when you wear this and someone asks you, what does it mean, that you're able to share your story, because it is powerful, and let them know that your dreams and visions are possible and that there's nothing impossible. And you are a living witness that there is nothing impossible when you stay focused and prepare yourself and allow God to order your steps, that there's nothing impossible. And so if you would like to purchase a shirt, please hit us on Podcast South, and I have different shirts. Of course, now a lot of people may not want to wear a shirt with a picture of me, which I don't understand why they wouldn't, but you know. And then I also have the butterfly that it shows, and the bulb that shows that we're evolving and becoming who we are, and that there's nothing impossible. So I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors. We thank Monica Hewitt, Making Memories Events and Design, for sponsoring our show. And if you would like to be a sponsor of Respus Live, please inbox us at South Podcast, or you can hit me up on Facebook or social media. I want to thank our music by A&A Promotion. We thank Antoine for that hot music intro and extra that we have. And then a shout out to my makeup artist, Make Beauty by Drea. We thank you for always beating my face to death. Thank you so much, because I can't do it. I don't wear makeup, but I think I should have it for the show. So again, thank you so much for coming. It has been a pleasure to have the opportunity to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come by and let our audience see who's running, and put a face with a name, and then understand your story and how powerful it is, and how the impossible is possible, and you're just a witness for that. So again, it's Podcast South. Please hit us up on Podcast South, and thank you again. We're going to follow you, and hopefully you'll be back to see us again, and we'll have a different story. We'll have a different outcome.
Oh yeah,
and
you keep giving me shirts, then I'm definitely going to show up. I keep getting free T-shirts. This is about to get worn at the gym on Monday.
Listen, you get one free T-shirt. The next one you're gonna have to pay for.
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
I respect that. I respect the grind. I respect that. That was the right answer.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We thank Chaz Beasley for stopping by and being a part of Respus Live. Thank you so much. We're excited. We're so excited about what's going to happen. Again, please follow him on social media, and don't forget to go vote, because voting is important. And again, may God's peace be with you until we meet again. God bless you. Thank you so much. It was amazing. You did a great job.